everybody. Thank you for coming out on a yucky Saturday. My name is Virginia Shearer, and I am head of public programs here at the High Museum of Art. It's my pleasure to welcome you to a lecture that I'm real excited about. I've been talking to George McCowan for a little over a year, and I think we're in for a real treat today. George McCowan is an industrial designer whose strength and passion lie in transportation design and automotive fine art. You'll see that in his presentation today. He's currently working at Navistar International Corporation. He's a digital designer, and he'll explain that to you. He lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, with his lovely family who are here today. He began his college career and graduated from Georgia Tech in 1992. He started out as an electrical engineering degree major. He'll tell you how he switched to industrial design and became voted the most talented illustrator by his peers and graduated with a Bachelor of Science in ID in 1998. Since then, he's realized many accomplishments. For the guys in the room, my husband was like, wow, this is so impressive. He designed the rims for the iconic Chevrolet C6 Corvette. He eventually landed in Motor City, and he worked for American Specialty Vehicles and the famed GM Performance Division Design Studio. For those of you who came and saw Ed Wellborn a couple of weeks ago, George was one of his designers. His design contributions included the first generation V-Series Cadillacs, Chevy SSR, the Saleen S5S Raptor, and numerous performance and concept vehicles. His professional and personal aspirations and work have come together. He's been recognized by the Associated Press, the industry-leading publication called Automotive News, and public access television. He's been a featured artist at the Auburn Cord Duesenberg Festival, the Automotive Hall of Fame, and various Department of Defense, United Air Force exhibits, where he exhibits his own fine art around the United States. So please join me in welcoming George McCowan.
Hello, everyone. It's good to see everyone here, braving the weather. I know it wasn't easy. But before we get started, I'll like to give a brief background for myself. I was born the second oldest of 5 children in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and our parents pushed us to achieve our dreams. And I didn't think, I would ever end up, up here, especially designing automobiles, because I didn't think that was possible. So hopefully through this slide presentation, for any youngsters who have that dream of being a designer or an artist or whatever, hopefully you'll see that, whatever you dream, you can achieve. So without further ado, we'll get started. All right, here are some topics we're going to cover. The first being exactly what is creativity and how does one recognize it when they see it. Creativity, according to the Webster's, is the ability to create inventions, produce works of art, or solve problems using an original, novel, or unconventional approach. Now, I never thought I had any creativity. What I did was I looked in magazines, car magazines, and drew what I saw because I couldn't buy the cars. I couldn't see them because I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I never saw a Ferrari driving down the street. So the best thing I could do was try to draw it and recreate it, and that was the closest thing I could do. So my dad always told me I was creative, but until you achieve your dreams or some semblance of success, you don't think you have it. But believe me, you have it. Truly creative people, they're intensely career-oriented, with no regard to the time. They devote enormous amounts of energy to their work. And, as my wife can attest, we're pretty annoying. The designers in particular, we need a variety of problems to solve. We need to be challenged. And we need to be recognized, for our challenges and our ability to solve a problem. And, of course, after that, we expect some sort of advancement. Without that, what are we doing it for? But designers, we don't really avoid situations where we might feel inferior, you know. Due to the fact that we want to solve problems and there's no answer yet, that's right up our alley, you know. So, you know, we always have the thinking hat on. And there are some characteristics that you can tell from these creative type people. They're self-confident. They have a higher than average self-image, you know, borderline cocky. You know, I've been called cocky, but I'm not cocky. I'm just confident. They're enthusiastic. They're not afraid of making a mistake, you know, and they're risk takers. You know, I'm up here today because, you know, the High Museum contacted me over a year ago, and I didn't know what I was going to talk about. I've been fretting with this presentation for about a year, but something within me said, I can't back away from this. This is an opportunity to take some risk. So, you know, here I am. And we do not seek approval from others or society. You know, and some of the designers, the young designers I've run into over the years, that fits them to the T. Very gung-ho. They strive for perfection. They're highly motivated. They're uncommonly persistent. They have an unusual ability to concentrate to finish the job and task at hand. They dislike being bossed or policed, and they're intensely absorbed in their work. A guy named Charles Warner wrote this paper, and I came across that a few months ago, and that summed up everybody you see here in this line. Very, very creative group of people. We all came together and designed this concept car called the Celine S5S Raptor, which debuted, I think, in '08 at the New York Auto Show. And very rarely do we get a chance to create a vehicle from the ground up, which means, you know, everything but the chassis is custom. And that was a fun project. In terms of the creative process, you know, there is a process when it comes to creativity. Until we're trained as designers, you know, we don't know what that process is. But going through school, we realized, you know, there needs to be a whole lot of research done, you know, at the outset. That means gaining a great deal of fundamental knowledge about the problem. And then there's a period of incubation where this knowledge just sits there and you know, you toil with it. Thirdly, there's a uncommonly large amount of time spent analyzing the problem. This young man, he's currently a designer for Harley-Davidson motorcycles. But when we first started, he's a gentleman I worked with on the Cadillac V-Series, STS V and the XLR V. And this guy would stay to midnight, you know, just because he wanted to get it right. He wanted to nail his design, and it wasn't for our superiors, it wasn't for a paycheck, it was because, you know, the design called for it. And you know, obviously there's an absorption in details, you know, everything from, you know, the functionality and the aesthetics and the marketability and the manufacturability of a product needs to be taken into account. And finally, the fun part is presentation. You know, we all like when we're done with the product and we get to present our finished product to see smiles, you know, go around, and that's the fun part, the visual part. But without the importance of developing a good work ethic and setting the foundation for goal accomplishment, none of this stuff can happen. My wife's going to be mad at me. When I was a kid, I was taught to believe by my parents that you know, like I told you before, anything is possible. Even when you don't think it's possible, it's there. All you got to do is take a step forward, and you can accomplish anything. And there's one cocky brat, you know. There's my sister back there. Where's my sister? She's back there, yeah. We were taught, you know, going to feed the ducks on Sundays after church, you know, and just getting out there doing things you ordinarily wouldn't do, you know, unbeknownst to us, just helps you live a life that you're not used to doing. You know, that I think that translated into us being risk takers and going down a path we didn't think we could ever go. And I didn't know that until, 2 years into college, that this affected me. Designers always have a commitment to excellence, and that should become second nature early on. Somewhere, somehow, there is someone influencing a designer when they're a kid to keep them pushing on, to finish a job that they've started. If I wanted to take piano lessons, when I was a kid, I had to take piano lessons for the whole year. I wasn't allowed to, try it out and quit after 2 weeks. That just wasn't in me. And this is where I was able to fantasize. This is the Fort Wayne Public Library, where, this was my home away from home. We didn't have cable growing up, rarely had cable, and the only place I could visualize, the outside world was through books and magazines at the library. And, this library allowed me to find images of, my passion, which is automobiles, and I would take those images and recreate them as best I could. This is sketches I still have to this day, because this shows the progression of where I've gone throughout the years. This is just for my personal enjoyment. But this was a slant nose rough roof 3.4 that I drew back in 6th grade, along with some other cars that I had to draw on the back of pieces of paper donated to me by my grandpa, because that was the only thing to draw on. But kids sometimes see the glamorous drawings of older people, older adults, and they think they can never attain that. Well, this is how it starts right here. Just get your ideas out on paper and keep practicing, and one day, you'll be a designer. Someone's going to pay you lots of money to put cars on the road. Another image. This was one I found amazing. Later on, I worked for the designer of this car when I was at ASC. He headed up the GM Performance Division. His name was Kip Lysenko. But he was the designer of the Buick Rietta that I liked when I was a kid, and you never know that life is a circle. Once you attain, once you follow your dreams, you're going to get some satisfaction and some realization as time goes on. And I was honored to have worked under Kip. He really taught me a lot. And I was a little, like I said, I went to the library a lot, so I would take the specifications of these cars and type them up for myself just to have them. It got me a little bit closer to the car, I guess. Don't tell anyone. And along with typing, you gotta strain your eyes a little bit, so you're gonna have to wear some glasses. But this is me as a freshman in high school. I chose to go the route of, I had my choice of going to a public school to play sports with all my friends, or go to a college prep and learn things that I didn't know. And it was a hard decision. My dad left it up to me, but I chose the right path. And I went to this college prep school, and here I am. I couldn't have made it to this point without being surrounded by like-minded people. And I point her out. This is Katrina Markov. Turns out she's a chocolatier based in Chicago, and it's amazing, how many success stories that are out there. If you surround yourself with people who are the same ilk of as you, where they're success driven, that's just going to spur you on and on throughout life, and help your kids and and the rest of your family members. And I'm drawing throughout high school. I'm practicing, not as much. I'm not drawing nearly as much in high school as I did in middle school, but I love cars, so I can't seem to get away from them. Yeah, mostly in high school, I was playing sports and hitting the books, and that's my coach back there, right behind my derriere. He taught me how to be a teammate. How to support my teammates through the thick and thin, how to cooperate, even if I didn't like it. I couldn't shout at the refs every time I wanted to. But being in a team environment really helps a youngster learn how to socialize and get along with upper-level management and along with his peers. And these were very invaluable days to me, playing in high school. And yet I was still practicing. Only in black and white, because that's all I knew. So at that point, I'm untrained. I can draw what I see. I don't know anything about perspective or anything, but upon my entry into industrial design, does anyone know what industrial design is? By show of hands? Yeah. Do we have any industrial design students in here? Okay, great. Is that Bill Bullock? Oh, okay. That was my dean in college. Tell Bill I said hi. But the industrial design is, here's Tech. First of all, before I get to that, I entered Georgia Tech wanting to be an electrical engineer. I convinced myself I had no creativity. I convinced myself I was going to be an electrical engineer because I like James Bond. I like Q, And I got to school and realized, that's a lot of theory. That's a whole lot of theory. I don't know if I can handle this. So after 2 years of struggling with electrical engineering, I was on the phone to my mom telling her to come and pick me up. I was going to drop out of college. This is not what I signed up for, or so I thought. And she told me, well, before you, shoot yourself in the foot, what do you love to do? And I had never asked myself that question seriously. Now, I was 20 grand in debt with my student loans. I had no other choice but to make something out of this. So I said, well, I'd love to draw cars. She said, well, find something on campus that'd get you close to that. And I had no idea up to that point. And this goes for a lot of designers. A lot of people fall into industrial design because they don't know what it is. But 3 weeks into the quarter, they let me into the field of industrial design because of practice. On my off hours of being bored with electrical engineering, I would still draw cars. They were a little bit more intense. As you can see, the detail was a little bit more refined, but that's what I did with the media that I had known, which is pencil and paper. But industrial design is basically the design of anything that is mass produced. Buildings aren't mass produced, that's architecture. But, as you can see, your iPhone is someone designed that. If they didn't design it correctly, it would fall out of your hand, it wouldn't work properly, you'd hate to look at it. The Beetle is a classic design. That's industrial design. That shoe up there, that's been designed. It's ergonomically correct where you don't break your ankle when you're walking down the street, if you know how to walk in it, anyways. And this furniture down here, these are all beautiful works of art. Excuse me. And this was right up my alley. My grandfather, he was a photographer, and he always had beautiful pieces of whatever around him. And, I fell in love with industrial design once I figured out what it was. And this is, even though it wasn't transportation design, it was still design. So I steamed ahead with industrial design at Georgia Tech. One of the courses I took at Georgia Tech had to do with visual communication. And these were the instruments that they gave us. I'd never used these before. Some of these things are expensive. These markers up here, they run about $3, $4 a piece, which I knew I was broke when I was in school. But I saved my money, and over the summers, I barreled down and I began to produce more art. This was the first color rendering of an automobile I did in class, and they told me not to do it anymore because I was spending too much time on it. But that was right up my alley. And over the summers, I worked, of course, but at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm in my parents' basement and I'm rendering automobiles again. These are all freehand color illustrations of automobiles. And you saw the jump from, as you practice and just a little bit of training, and all of a sudden you're a bona fide automotive illustrator or a bona fide industrial designer or a bona fide, automotive designer. Doesn't take much. Another freehand illustration, Callaway Impala Ss. Most of these cars were just sitting, loosely on the shelf, and a friend invited me to take part in an exhibit, and that put me on the track to employment after college, because I had no job when I graduated. But all the hard work up to then set me on the right track, and I didn't know it at the time. This is it's one of my favorites, a 56 300 SC by Mercedes. That's sold. And this is a Cadillac 3.1 Fleetwood V16. And living up near Auburn, Indiana, there's the annual festival up there. Well, it used to be pretty good. Now it's not that good anymore. But surrounded by these $1 million automobiles. If you saw this at the auction, it'd probably be worth $1.6 million. And it's just a beautiful example of industrial design that it's withstood the test of time. There's another. This photo was taken. It's an illustration of a photo that was taken inside the museum. It's a very Art Deco environment. But back to the basics. These are typical product design, design projects in college, where we had to put on our thinking hat and make functional yet interesting solutions to problems posed by our professors, which caused an artist to think. Artists sometimes don't like to think; they just like to sit and sketch. But if you want to be a good designer, it has to work, because the end result is it needs to be mass produced. It needs to be mass produced, inexpensively, and it needs to stand the test of time. This is another design project. Now, this would be an example of something that an untrained designer would produce. He loves to draw, but he doesn't have his perspective down. He doesn't know exactly how things fit inside a cockpit of a car. But that's all right. If he gets solid training, he's going to get trained, and by the end of it, he's owning his own company, or he's talking to Ed Welburn, and Welburn's patting him on the back saying, "Good job." Other sketches of automobile exteriors. Where the designer is thinking, putting his thinking hat on. And you can tell the mode of mind is being transformed. He's just not drawing what he sees. He's presenting this to someone. He's presenting shapes for theme development, and you only learn that through training. Just another sketch. And with the right tools, this is Photoshop or another graphics program that produced this. I didn't draw this. A friend of mine drew this. He's a very good illustrator. But he also drew that first image of the sketchy cockpit. That was his as well. And with a little bit of training, you can produce, coherent sketches like this that you present to management, and they can decide whether to, build a concept car out of it or not. This was a team project that we did at Georgia Tech when I was a senior, where we utilized, computer-aided industrial design software like Alias, which is what I use on a daily basis at Navistar. And, we had to build a hard model. I think this is made out of wood. We'll get to the meat of this presentation. What does a car designer face on a daily basis? Well, he faces a lot of red tape, a lot of bureaucracy, but a lot of fun as well. It's good to be surrounded with people more talented than yourself, because that's how you grow. This is my first job. I was a wheel designer for Speedline. I don't know if anyone's ever heard of that company. It was an Italian-based company, and they sent me over to Italy for about 10 days or so to train under these two jokesters, and they taught me the ins and outs, how to build rims very, very quickly, you know. It's a little different than in the old days where you had to wear a tie to work and, you know, it was very regimented. It was a shot of a GM, like the typical the clay studio inside of General Motors back in the 60s. Guys using the typewriter. They don't use those anymore. And this is a clay-covered model, you know, where there's foam underneath. I think I have another slide that shows it. But this is the typical studio that you'll see, the clay studio that you'll see today. You know, a little bit more laid back. And the tools that a designer is going to use today is very different, drastically different than the tools we used 10 years ago. This is a Cintiq, which is a digital pad where you can actually, it's a computer screen, but you can draw on it. And it's very useful, and it hurts your back a little bit, but it's, you know, without keeping up with technology nowadays, you know, you can be as creative as you want, but it's really important to keep up with the technology that's out there. And then there's rendering software out there. People don't really render by hand anymore. They don't do the full-blown, full-color illustrations that I did back in college. They're using software like Maya or 3D Studio Max to create images that they can present to executives to have them decide on whether to spend money or if they don't like a design or not. That's me in my first office. And it was in that office that after about 4 months on the job and getting my Italian specialty training, I was asked to design for the C6 Corvette. And I'd drawn rims all my life, you know, in my drawings as a kid, so I thought it was pretty easy for me. You know, the guy who hired me, he was the vice president of this company, Speedline North America, and he saw my artwork at my my second art exhibit, and he hired me on the spot because he saw potential. You know, my practice from back in 6th grade got me this job. You know, I didn't know the software or at the time, but he saw right through that and gave me the training. And I'm proud to say this is a beautiful wheel. I hate that they keep changing the style on the Corvette. They get dorky and dorkier. But leave the rims alone. They're fine, you know. And like I said, politics are in play everywhere you go. GM was told, I didn't work directly for GM at the time, I worked for Speedline. GM was told that their rims were being designed by an Italian firm. So whenever I was asked to be, you know, I was told that my name was Giorgio. So I said, okay, no wonder you guys won't ever let me go see the clay. So I only found out after the fact, but I'm Giorgio. So yeah, I found this photo on the web, you know, because I never saw the development of the Corvette clay, but they approved the design of that wheel, I think, the first round, which is very rare for styling on a Corvette because they're very sensitive about that. But I'm proud of that shot too. And yeah, at Speedline, that's all I did. I did rims. I learned how to use the math tool, which is called Alias. It's a software owned by the firm Autodesk. They use UG. They own UG as well, Unigraphics. But the Alias is more for the industrial designer to build math and to render, you know, realistic renderings. And this wheel does not exist. It's all in 3D. And you know, looking at this image, and executives can say, yeah, I want 500,000 of these rims made, you know, as opposed to, I don't know what I want because I haven't seen it. So that's the value of learning to master the software. You can look good. This is Kip Lysenko. He was the chief designer for the performance division. He also ran, I think, the Cadillac studio at one point, the Buick studio, and he was the first director of Saturn. And this guy had a lot of years under his belt at GM, I think over 40, if I'm not mistaken. And he showed us the ropes. You know, I moved to Detroit back in 2001 or 2002, I can't remember. And he took us under his belt, and we had fun designing for him. These are all the vehicles, except for the Evoque down there. That was his claim to fame, and Cadillac. He started the art and science mode, for GM and Cadillac. But all these puppies here, the Woodward Dream Cruise GTO, the Chevrolet SS, I designed those rims, and worked on parts of that car. Cadillac STSV up there. This was a rendering that, you never get in touch. You never get to speak with the executives at General Motors, because they're executives. They come in, they review, they wave their hands, and they walk out. But so you have to, in order to get your designs on the road, you have to go the extra mile to make them make a decision. So this was rendered for Bob Lutz in particular, and Kip told me that he loved it. I think he had a poster of it made and put it on his wall or something. But I love rendering. I love rims, so it's a poster we made. And they loved it so much they spent, I think this prototype is all carbon fiber rim and a magnesium alloy hub. I think this one rim costs $7,000 because it only weighs like 5 pounds, 3 or 5 pounds, and it's super strong. I'd love to get a set for my car, but I don't make that much money. All right, working for a good chief will always expose you to others with amazing talent and diverse backgrounds. Good chief designers, they let you be who you are. They allow you to grow and mature as a designer, and they don't hold you back. They give you feedback when you need it. And working with Kip in particular, I was, he only had the best people working for him on his projects. So I was blessed to be able to work with good designers, very good designers in General Motors. Typical work me out, sketches, loose sketches that, depict the interior of a car. And, I could never do anything like this, but there are people out there who have that knack, have a special niche gift, to illustrate, I worked with a Korean guy once who was able to rotate entire vehicles in his head and sketch it out on paper right there, right while he's talking to you. He didn't speak much English, but he could point you in the direction he wanted you to go by turning something, 30 degrees, flipping it upside down and drawing it again. And that was genius as far as I'm concerned. But, every teammate on the team has their gift that they bring to the table. This is a napkin sketch drawn by one of my friends that just turned into, a little side project that he was banking on someone, making. I think he developed these sketches even more so. But you can see the talent here, and that only comes. This is the same guy who had the sketchy cockpit design earlier. I mean, just being around good designers just elevates your skills. I think these are ideations of a headlamp or looks like grill intake, air intake or something, or sketches. And these are typical of any design firm. Everyone, like I said, everyone has their own talent. It's just like going back to school and walking through the library. You get to see things you've never seen before, or see someone else do something a certain way, and it really keeps you on your toes. We'll speed it up here. This was a combination of I think Photoshop or SIDS, Alias, and math modeling. And you can see the detail in the development of this. This was a headlamp done for the stretch STS for the Chinese market, and the grill for that car. Again, all these are digital renderings, not photographs. Well, that one's a photograph of a clay property. All right, these are steps. I'm not going to take the time to read all these, but these are the steps of the design process. Once again, you need to do a lot of research, a lot of sketching, prototype models, digital reviews with your management and other designers to make sure you're not going off on la la land, and a lot of refinement. This was a project that only lasted in the sketchy phase, where you're just putting down pretty broad interpretations of what you want to happen on this design. Executives can say, no, I don't like the shape. Yeah, I like the shape. Refine it even further. You have to realize what your target audience is. These are sketches for seats and various operations within the interior of the bus. I'm sorry. If you want to, if you want to indicate that there's mesh or a certain fabric on a seat, you need to have the means to be able to render that. So practice. You're constantly practicing your skills. Photoshop or whatever to make you as flexible as possible. So you're not discounting ideas that you have because you don't know how to get it done. So it's a constant learning process. More renderings. And you're spelling it out for the bean counters and the executives. Usually they're not going to take the time to sit down and decipher what you have going on, so you have to make it very, as explanatory as possible. Which causes you to, you really need to think. This is an exercise in digital concept modeling. The last one was all, basically 2D with a tablet. But this is a storyboard for a project we did for General Motors when I was working at ASC, which was basically the Chevrolet Volt's baby brother. It's called the Chevrolet Shock. And I built the math, for the geometry rather for the car, and the designer Dave Byron, who's now a design director for Celine, Motorsports. This is his project. He spearheaded the project. So we worked in tandem to get his design, realized in math, and he would render it up so we could present it to Welborn or anyone else's ear that we had. But it didn't go any further than concept, basically, a math concept. And after that, we worked on the Raptor, which was introduced in 2008, as I said before. Once again, Dave Byron, is an awesome, talented designer. He spearheaded this project, or he won. There was actually two designers at the beginning, but they chose his theme, and he ran with it. Sorry. A lot of research was done on the competition, or your target market, and your predecessor. Dave likes wheel flares, as you can tell. And this is all his ideation sketches that he developed on this car. A lot of it was pie in the sky, and he eventually had to settle down and build something believable. And it gets a point where the timeline dictates, or the money dictates that, all right, we have to stop playing in the sand, and now go down one path. Choose, go down the path of the chosen theme and start refining your details. This is what we're doing now. So he's settling down, everything's tightening up. You know, there's even a math model over here that he can draw over top of or Photoshop to get his point across. So here's another math model. I love math models. This car was, I'm sorry, I skipped over a point. This car was a clay lead project, which means the clay property, the full-size clay property, is what drives this project. It's not someone in a tube driving the development of this product. So every time there's a change in the clay, you know, we use a machine which basically scans the surface of the clay and digitizes it. So we can get this into 3D, and then we can make more changes or whatever. And you either lead with clay or you lead with the computer. And this project we led with the clay because it was an entirely new car. There were no pieces we needed to mate up with or the like. And after a number of weeks, you're at a pretty decent position where you can take fiberglass molds off the clay property and start making hard parts and fiberglass parts. And I had no idea how this stuff worked, you know, when I was living in Indiana. Only after I moved to Detroit and saw the artisans and the clay sculptors and the clay modelers fab up a full-size concept car out of clay. How they do that just blew my mind. Now I see it every day, but you know, that's good to see. You know, if you're an aspiring designer or industrial designer, you know, seek out a studio. You know, they'll be glad to show you as a student, show you the ropes. You know, and that will just get your mind focused on exactly, you know, what you're capable of, what you want to be capable of. This is a finished project. I don't think they're going to make this car, but it sure looks good. And Mr. Byron has a lot of work in here, but this is a digital lead project only because this car only has a new fascia, a new hood, a new rocker, which is, you know, this piece down here, and it's mating up to basically, it's mating up to the current 2010 Mustang. So you do this in a computer because you know where the boundaries are, because you have that in math, and you can build off of that. So the engineering is halfway done for you. It's another preliminary sketch over existing math where the designer can present, you know, which direction he wants to go in. This is a screenshot of the software Alias, which shows the designers, you know, basically building the modelers, the math modelers, building to the designer's intent. And it doesn't look like much now, but all it takes is some fillets on some raw edges and some nice reflective paint. Get some lights in there, and most people can't tell the difference. Most of the car commercials we see, you know, we see Silverados driving over mountains and stuff. That's all digital now. They're not taking, you know, a camera out there in the mountains. They're rendering that. It's all animation. That's how far technology, you know, has come in the last 10 years. And digital design allows for multiple iterations in a short amount of time. You know, if we were doing this in clay, you know, the designer would have to work with the clay sculptor, and he just sculpts. He's not adding his 2 cents into the clay. He's doing what the designer tells him. And to get, you know, 5 or 6 different, you know, iterations, ideations out of this, that would take, you know, maybe 10 weeks. So digital math is very, very powerful. After the math is developed, they use the math to cut hard density foam. And then, you know, this is foam. I can't remember which. I didn't work on this one, but it's either foam or clay. I can't remember. I think this is clay. And they're going to take fiberglass mold of that and actually build a real life fascia and hood and rocker. Here's the results of that fiberglass, unpainted. And they're fitted to the existing body of the Mustang, and you can see the gaps are really tight because they built it in math, and they had both sides of this line. So they knew exactly where this piece would fall. Another shot of them putting the hard parts on the car. And these are all renderings of the math. You know, this isn't a photo shoot yet. I'm sure Dave photoshopped a lot in there. I can tell a little bit, but these shots are used to justify to the management and to yourself that, you know, you're going to have a hit on your hands when you unveil it at the auto show, because your hard model will turn out exactly like that, like the rendering will. You got good people working on it. It's just a shot of the custom paint that they mixed. This guy takes a lot of pride in his work. Painting the car. Now this car is ready to be photographed. This is, I think this car had 18 coats of paint on it. We saw it, my son and I saw it at the Detroit Auto Show, and these photos don't do it justice. Another photo. And currently I work at International Navistar. I never thought I'd be, you know, helping design big rigs, but, you know, here I am. And it's fun. This was a project that happened before I got there, but my boss gave me the go-ahead to give him a plug. So these are old International trucks that they used to base, there's another, I think a D-Max they called it, that they used to base the Navistar Lone Star off of. Anyone know what a Lone Star is? It looks like? No? These are sketches of the final product. Not final product, sketches of their intent. These are nice dog and pony show shots using, looks like Photoshop. And all these shots are used to direct the clay guys, the clay modelers, and design management to get exactly out of the clay what they have in the sketches, or what they want out of the sketches. In this truck, this studio, this is a full-size clay model of an 18-wheeler, which sits about almost 15 feet high. I don't know how much that thing weighs, but pretty impressive walking into work and, you know, seeing giant trucks out there made out of clay. This is a blank of the front end, you know, of the clay that they're sculpting to get the slabs of the truck, you know, the direct proportions that they want before they start adding details. You know, these are tape lines. You know, a lot of old school designers use tape to demarc, you know, where they want things going, so they can visualize. You know, tape helps you visualize the lines. You know, you walk around it, you get on your knees, you look up under it, you get on the ladder and you look down to make sure you don't have any funny business going on in your line work. And usually, you know, if you're developing two themes of a design at the same time, you split the model down the middle, put a mirror in it, so you appear to have, you know, one whole vehicle. That helps executives and that helps the designer visualize the entire product. Now here they've taken the tape lines, and I'm sure they built this in 3D by now, these grills, these louvers. But they're, you know, I don't know how long that took, but it looks like it took a long time. All these are hand hand sculpted and or milled. They have a giant mill, which is it's a robotic arm that has a drill bit on the end of it. Usually has 3 to 5 axes, and it just goes around and drills out what you tell it to. So if the math, if you built the math to have, this vent in here, going in 10 mils deep, it knows exactly where it is. It'll come in and slowly notch that out, over time. It'll run this way, all the way down, and then the clay sculptor goes in at the end and scrapes on it, to get it nice and smooth. Here's the other side of that truck. So you have this theme on one side and this theme on the other side, because they can't tell which theme they want to go with yet. Another shot. They put, either foil, or there's a material called Dynoc, which is basically painted film that they put on cars or put on clay properties to make it seem more realistic, so they can get a feel for the final product. And that's what I was talking about. This is a clay property. This is the same truck. It's all clay, but it has Dynoc, which is painted film on it. It has hard parts for the headlamps. These are probably milled out of foam. There's probably a paper graphic in there that denote, a vent. They have real badges that they put on there, real fog lamps. So an executive, who lives in a different state can walk in and say, all right, we're going to go with that. We're going to make, 500,000 of these. And that's the importance of clay properties. You can build in math all day long, but until you build it full scale, you don't know what you have on your hands. It's a forward front view shot. It's another shot. This is all, icing on the cake for the marketers. It's probably a math file that they rendered up and put it next to the heritage vehicle. PR shot. And this is a truck. It's not in the design. This is a Harley Davidson edition of the truck. Harley Davidson jumped in at one point and said, this would be a good product for our customers, who own bikes. I don't know how much this truck costs, but it's very expensive. But it has different grille on it, different treatments, different paint scheme, a lot more chrome, and pretty impressive walking past it. And I need to give acknowledgement to all the fellow designers that I've worked with over the years. Dave Byron, he's a design director for Celine Mustang. Very good sport. He came in 3 years after I got there, and it was good to see Dave mature as a designer, and right now he's shining. He's shining out there in Detroit. These three guys, they got together and started their own company, Revolution Design in Detroit, and they're currently working with all the OEs up there. There's just three guys working in their basement, following their dream of being a designer, and Ford's loving their stuff, GM's loving their stuff, and this could turn into this probably will turn into a multi-million-dollar design studio, design house. Dave Allendorf is my boss there at Navistar, and Mr. Nagara is he let me come in and take some photos of his studios at Lawrence Tech University up there in Michigan. And I've spoken enough, so that concludes my presentation. If anyone has any questions, feel free.
Thank you so much, George. So you guys think you could draw like that? Anybody want to go head to head with him? Yeah, you do? Here, let's pass this.
I thoroughly enjoyed your presentation, but I wanted to ask you a couple of questions, and The first one is, you know, General Motors and Chrysler has just gone through some turmoil, and they eliminated a lot of the car lines that they were previously making.
Right.
And from your own original perspective, what do you think was wrong with the designs that they eliminated for those lines? I mean, that's a broad general question, and I realize that, you know, but from a designer's perspective about that. And then my other question is, when you design certain components of the cars, you must have cost constraints. In other words, you cannot design something that will exceed X number of dollars produced in mass.
Right.
So how do you work within that, and then with the environmental and emission and all the requirements that the government imposes upon the automobile companies now? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. First of all, my take on the downsizing of Chrysler and General Motors is they had no choice. You know, they had to cut some lines out. You know, they had redundant products in there. You know, there was a Oldsmobile version of a Chevy. There's a Buick version of a Chevy. There's a Cadillac version of a Chevy. So they're trying to, you know, they were forced by the government to start making sense on paper. You know, they were a big company. GM is still a huge company, but the lines that they cut, they probably want to maximize their profits in China, first of all, because that's the next big horizon for sales for them. So Chinese love Buicks. That's why they cut Pontiac. You know, otherwise they probably would have cut Buick. So, you know, there was nothing wrong with the designs. It's just, you know, who are they going after? You know. Secondly, what was secondly? Cost. You normally have constraints. You know, a lot of young designers come in there and they want to make, you know, James Bond type products. But, you know, the engineers, you always have an engineer or manager or project manager over your shoulder saying, all right, we got to design common sense wise. We can't put LEDs everywhere. You know, you just get slapped on the hand and you get told no. But you try, you know, and then you get whittled down to the most cost effective way that looks the best.
Okay, since the other gentleman had a multi-part question, I will also. You said your parents guided you a lot as you were growing up and told you you could do anything you wanted to do. So I wanted to know a little bit about your parents' educational background, what your dad does. I want to know what your brothers and sisters do. And my last question is, since you love to draw, how did you get steered into industrial design rather than to be an artist?
Okay, well, first of all, my parents, they're unique. You know, my dad is a bishop in the church, and so sky's the limit for him. You know, no pun intended. You know, I gotta write that one down. You know? So he doesn't let anything hold him back. So we saw him as a living example. You know, and we held ourselves back. I held myself back. I know that. I never thought I was an artist. I never thought I was a designer because all I did was open a magazine up and draw what I saw. But he kept telling me, no, that's creative, that's creativity. You're producing something that hasn't been produced yet, you know. And that, after failing, you know, basically failing at electrical engineering, I had no choice. I was almost pushed into industrial design because I had no other choice but to follow that. You know, my sister back there, she's unique. She's very good with people, you know, very good with details. Both of us are. I have a younger sister. She's going to school for social work, and I have two younger twin brothers. You know, one's a dad, and another one, he's very good with people. We all get it from our parents. You know, he's a hotel manager, I think, in Amarillo, Texas. But my mom, she's a housewife. You know, she helps out at the church, you know, and with, you know, people who need help. You know, so we're helping family. We help each other, and you know, that's what we do. You know.
Okay, coming around.
Well, like I said, I'm not much of an engineer, but what I hear is, you know, my son just told me today they're developing a car that, you know, whose pistons run off air rather than, you know, electrical charge. we've always had that technology, but, we gotta make money. The electrical vehicle is a long way. I mean, it's been a long time coming. They produced the EV1, back in the 80s, they did, and that was a hit, but there's a video out there that shows why they killed it, and it wasn't because it didn't work. It was because, there were politics involved. So there's always going to be politics involved. Alternative fuels, they're just, we're making, PETA happy. Is that PETA? We're making somebody happy, we're not putting animals in gasoline, but the global warming, the global warming condition that we find ourselves in the middle of is forcing car companies to play politics to what type of technologies they develop, and the government mandate on emissions. That's a good thing, and that'll just lead to, we'll just be hopping back, in my opinion, we'll be hopping from, technology to technology. Whatever maximizes the profits from the corporations, which is why they're in business, is the route that they'll take, I believe.
When you went into industrial engineering, how did you get into more of the field of designing cars and parts of cars and stuff like that instead of something like the iPod or doorknobs or something?
It depends on your job, I mean, I had the training to design products. Once you have that training, you can design anything, basically. It's just, industrial design is a broad field. So there's niche specialties within design. And I found myself back up in the Midwest, near Detroit. And, if I'm going to design anything, I believed I wanted to design cars. So I sought out retired automobile designers, automotive artists, and, my ambition led me into the field of transportation design. I have the unique ability to bridge the gap. A lot of designers don't have that. They think they can ignore the engineers, or, the engineers don't count. But without both designer and engineer, you don't have a successful project.
A follow-up question to that question. At the time that the concept car is presented to management, is all of the engineering complete in that car, so it basically is something that can be out and sold? And secondly, what is how long is the process from concept to something that's presented to management? Right.
Well, we'll take the Raptor, for instance, the yellow supercar up there. The only engineering that went on with that was the chassis. It had to fit on an existing chassis, which was probably a Mustang chassis, I don't recall. But not too often do companies just do ground up. They don't create a new chassis for their concept. So there has to be some semblance of realism, in the concept. People need to be able to fit in it. If you're just doing a concept to spur on the next generation of design, then the roof line of your Camaro is going to be slammed. No one's going to be able to fit in it. You're just doing it to gauge public reaction. But eventually, if you haven't crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, you're going to raise the roof line, like they did in the Camaro or the Chevrolet Volt, which looks totally different than the concept, and you're going to scare some people away. So I think GM is trying to get back to doing realistic concept designs. And normally those projects take anywhere from 13 weeks. If you're going really fast for auto show, or as long as getting something from concept to production used to take 7 years, but probably now down to 4 years.
I know that Bill Mitchell had his secret studio to develop the Stingray, and at that time, all of the design was done within the company or your R&D. Mm-hmm. My impression here is that it's outsourced. Is that the way things are done now?
When I moved to Detroit, I worked for ASC, which is directly across the street from General Motors Technical Center. That was no accident. We tied in. We were on General Motors server. We saw everything that they did. Bob Lutz and Welburn, they came over to our building for reviews, and they called our building GM Design North. Since then, they've since yanked that out of there and took everything back in-house to save money or whatever. But I hear that they're looking to put it back across the street again. So sometimes they have to remove that studio so people don't see what's going on, because there are a lot of prying eyes out there. So it depends on how much money they want to spend, But a lot of companies have brought things in-house. Navistar has, definitely.
Yeah, cars have changed a lot in their design for safety, and I wondered, I never hear that mentioned, but I wonder how, whether that's engineering's design or your design, or how that impacts your design for
Right.
safety features.
Yeah, that's all engineering. You know, those guys do a super job. You know, I saw a crash test comparison between a 53 Bel Air and a 2008 Malibu or something, and that Bel Air was that long and ended up being that long because there weren't any safety features in it. And all that stuff is in the chassis and the crumple zone that they've designed. You know, they've designed the frame to do certain things. So all that stuff is done up front by the engineers. And, you know, designers, industrial designers, they usually work on the exterior components, what you can see and touch, and the interior components, you know, what you can see and touch.
Did you have a question up there?
Could you explain a bit about the collaborative design process for the aerodynamics, the mechanical dynamics of the automobile with the designers and the process of how you guys deal with those issues?
Right. Currently, I work for Navistar, which has the most aerodynamic, fuel-efficient truck on the market, and the ProStar. There wasn't an image of that up there. But we work daily with the aerodynamics team. They constantly go down to Texas and test scale models in the wind tunnel, you know, and tell us to, all right, this bumper has to do this, or this can't do that. And, you know, our executives, you know, now fuel mileage is very important. So you can't discount aero anymore. Before it was whatever. You know, now they're trying to shave off, you know, 0.2%, 0.3%, and, you know, we're working very closely with them, within millimeters, you know, on a daily basis. So that's a good thing. It's good to see, you know, everyone, in my opinion, everyone being satisfied.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, George. This is a wonderful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.